When was Jesus born? And when was he crucified? When Jesus was born and when was he crucified, perhaps everybody knows, at least approximately. We count our time from the birth of Jesus, and within a year, Christmas is traditionally the celebration of Jesus' birthday. Moreover, according to the New Testament descriptions, at least for first reading, Jesus began to serve at the age of 30 and served for 3 years, so he died at the age of 33. However, none of these dates are correct. It is now a well-known fact that Jesus was not born in 1 AD, nor in 0, since the year 0 doesn't even exist except as an astronomical concept. The questions that arise during the determination of the year are, among others, coming from the different approaches of the accounts of the evangelists Matthew and Luke, and from the various interpretations of Luke's words. While Matthew places the birth of Jesus during the reign of Herod, towards the end of it, we know that Herod died in 4 BC, Luke, on the other hand, takes a different approach. He mentions August Caesar's census in 8 BC and then mentions the name of a certain Quirinius. However, since we know that Saturninus was the governor at the birth of Jesus, thus the alignment of the two Gospels and the historical evidence gave lots of researchers a great deal of headaches. There is no time to go into details right now, but in the description I will place my all-inclusive article for the sake of those who are interested. Maybe one day I will create a separate video to it. In short, the Gospels do not contradict but merely complement each other, and they are also perfectly consistent with the historical facts, from which it can be clearly concluded that the census in Israel was in 7 BC and Jesus was born at the end of that year. Now, let's look exactly when Jesus could have been born within the year. Christmas is traditionally celebrated as the birthday of Jesus by the Christian world. And indeed, there are some biblical scriptures that state that it was really Jesus who brought the light into the world that was sitting in darkness. And because the Christmas time is very close to winter solstice, that is not the worst guess. There is an interesting thing about the birth of Jesus that can help. What links the determination of the year and the date within the year is the appearance of the Star of Bethlehem. There are two main concepts among researchers in this regard. Either they are identified with a supernatural phenomenon, since the star in the sky stopped at last, or with a natural explanation. However, since the apparent movement of the stars in the sky is exactly what the Bible describes, I am voting in favor of the natural phenomenon, that the Babylonian wise men set out on a well-predicted event centuries ago, as Saturn and Jupiter were in 7 BC it stands together 3 times. Moreover, in the constellation Pisces, which is why the whole thing was associated with the Judaism. The triple conjunction within a year itself is such a rare phenomenon which only happened 550 years before. The mages had already seen the conjunction in March, which according to ancient calendar calculations had taken place in the previous calendar year. This may be the reason why, when they arrived in Israel towards the end of the year, Herod killed all children under the age of 2, not just the newborns. The person who on November 12, which is the third conjunction of 7 BC, looked up the sky in Jerusalem, saw exactly this. The mages had to wait for the night to set in before they can leave. The approximately 8.5 km road at night in the dark could be done in 3 to 4 hours. As can be clearly seen, the Jupiter-Saturn duo first points definitely south in the sky and travels horizontally for hours relative to the horizon, slowly turning to the south-southwest direction, which fits perfectly from the road from Jerusalem to Bethlehem. However, from about 10 o'clock in the evening, when the mages could reach Bethlehem, the apparent motion of the conjunction in the sky changed shifting from a uniformly slow horizontal motion to a vertical one, so that its perpendicular projection remained almost perfectly motionless. It is not certain that the star was showing exactly the house where Mary is occupied, as the Bible merely mentions that the star stood above the place. In any case, by the time the Mages arrived, Jesus was born some time ago already, so he was not a newborn. Because if we read the Bible carefully, we can see that Jesus had already been presented in the temple by that time, so approximately he was already a 6-week-old baby. Thus, based on these, Jesus' birthday was at the end of September or the beginning of October. Therefore, the conjunction also explains why did Herod kill the children under 2, why the star disappeared for a short period of time and then reappeared again. It's clearly because the sky may have been a bit cloudy that night, and an angel wouldn't have needed disappearance and reappearance again for no reason at all. And it also explains how did the star stop for a while in the sky. So the star was showing exactly the direction in the sky to Bethlehem that night, and from within Bethlehem to the accommodation. And the 7 BC date also shows complete agreement with the historical facts. The fact that Jesus was born about the beginning of October can also be accurately calculated without conjunctions, exclusively from the Bible. For John the Baptist was born 6 months before Jesus, and his conception was also a supernatural event, which was told beforehand to his father, Zechariah, by an angel during the temple ministry after Pentecost. From all this it can be calculated that John the Baptist was born in April, so Jesus was born in October, which is moreover the Feast of Tabernacles, a prominent Jewish feast in the Bible. Several circumstantial evidence, both in the Old Testament and in the New Testament, shows that the Feast of Tabernacles is the feast of Jesus' birthday. For instance, in the book of Zechariah, chapter 14, verses 16 to 19 states that all the people of the world will go up to Jerusalem every year to celebrate the Feast of Tabernacles. It can be a coincidence that this one holiday is highlighted only. Or in the New Testament, John chapter 1 verse 14 states that the Word became flesh and dwelt among us, where the word dwelt also means to camp or tent, which is the meaning of the Feast of Tabernacles. To sum up, Jesus was born in 7 BC at the Feast of Tabernacles, which falls on a different date each year, but at that year it fell on the end of September, beginning of October. As lengthy as it is to calculate the date of Jesus' birth, it is at least as complicated to determine the exact time of the crucifixion. We know at least for sure that he was crucified at Passover, so sometime in March or April. However, according to Daniel's famous prophecy, both the year and the day are relatively easy to determine. In the book of Daniel, chapter 9, verses 25-26 states, "So you are to know and discern that from the issuing of a decree to restore and rebuild Jerusalem until Messiah, the Prince, there will be 7 weeks and 62 weeks. It will be built again, with plaza and moat, even in times of distress. Then after the 62 weeks the Messiah will be cut off and have nothing, and the people of the Prince who is to come will destroy the city and the sanctuary, and its end will come with a flood. Even to the end there will be war. Desolations are determined." So Daniel speaks of a total of 69 times 7 years, which is 483 years. But it must be borne in mind that the Bible in prophetic places, both in the Old and New Testament, never counts 365-day years, but instead 360-day years. Thus, 483 years must be understood as exactly 173,880 days. What makes this prophecy incredibly exciting to me is that if we take the date of the decision to rebuild Jerusalem in the text as the starting date, as the 20th year of Artaxerxes' reign, then from 445 BC The month of Nisan, counting 173,880 days, it is exactly April 9 in 32 CE, which is the 14th of Nisan if we take into consideration the calendar reform of Artaxerxes, then the Babylonian and Jewish calendar systems in lengthy calculations. All of this is strikingly accurate with the records of the New Testament, as we know that the beginning of service of John the Baptist was in the 15th year of Emperor Tiberius, so it was in 29 CE, and after that Jesus was baptized before the next Pesach in 30 CE, and then, according to the testimony of the New Testament, Jesus took part in a total of 3 Passover feasts, so the last happened in 32 CE. The day of the crucifixion is exactly what Daniel wrote in his book. Since the book of Daniel was written before 1 BCE, this fact alone proves that the Bible can predict the events of the future with complete accuracy. As a result, we get that Jesus was born around the first day of October 7 BCE and he died in early April 32 CE. Thus, contrary to popular belief, Jesus didn't die at the age of 33, but at the exact age of 37 and a half, because this is how much time has passed between the two dates. And there was no 0 year. If we look closely at the Bible, this number is of paramount importance. But let's first find out how long an average person lives in his earthly life. Several misunderstandings need to be dispelled in this area as well, as there are those who claim from the Bible that God created man to live for 120 years. The verse that provides the basis for this is Genesis chapter 6 verse 3, but the verse in this doesn't describe the life expectancy of man, but only how much time God has given to mankind until the destruction of the flood that is to come. On the other hand, Psalm chapter 90 says, "The days of our years are 70 years or 80 years if they are higher." Well, some might say that we can find several people in the Bible who have lived longer than this. Just as we know that human life with today's technology can be extended up to about 100 years or so. However, if you look at life expectancy at birth in the world, it is approximately vary between 66 and 80 years, depending on how healthy or unhealthy our environment and region. In any case, it fits into the picture that Moses also observed that life expectancy at birth is between about 70 to 80 years. And here comes the first interesting connection. The average of 70 and 80 is 75, and it follows that the half-time of human life, based on that biblical and scientific average, is 37 and a half years, which is exactly as much as Jesus lived here on earth. The half-time of our life has a special significance and role, not only according to the Bible, but also to the Greco-Roman culture, according to which everyone is spending the first half of our life, particularly with preparation, to be able to accomplish everything what is destined for us to fulfill. So this approximately age of 40, in Greco-Roman culture at least, was given a special word, acme, which means climax, and was taken so seriously that at half-time is the time when real life begins. That some graves were written the date of the acme instead of the date of birth. Surely, real life, fulfillment, doesn't begin with preparation, but with the realization of the plans and fulfillment of the promises. In Psalm chapter 102, verse 24, we read, "O my God, do not take me away in the midst at half of my days." If we look closely at one of Jesus' greatest forerunners, David, the king of Israel, we can see that he was crowned king over whole Israel exactly 37 and a half years old. So Jesus was actually only just prepared everything. Exactly the same age as when David was made king, Jesus marched into Jerusalem with dignity, cheering from the crowd. He went in like a king, but instead of being crowned, he was deceptively crucified out of envy. But his body, risen from the dead, went up to heaven, from where he will return to occupy his royal throne, and thus Israel would receive back his king, the Messiah, the Savior, in the body of a 33.5 years old man, as he wouldn't age in thousands of years, when he fulfills everything he was just prepared for before. Thank you for watching.